Welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is all about how to get sales from social media. Thanks to everyone who's joined promptly. If you've just joined us, please feel free to do introductions in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you work, where you're based. And as I mentioned, we are using Mentimeter today. So if you are joining us live, make sure you get out your device, whether that's your phone or another tab, and open menti.com and enter the code you can see at the top of the screen. Or if you are using your phone, you can just use the QR code. So we have just under an hour, and I want to really make sure I use this time to effectively deliver all the tips and tricks and strategies that I've learned over the last year. I predominantly use social media to drive new partnerships, new collaborators in my business. So what I want to do today is walk you through some very, very common mistakes I used to make, and also challenge you to think about how you can be more consistent and intentional with the time you use on platforms like LinkedIn and social media to make sure that you're not only putting content out there, but you're using that content to target your ideal customers. And you're also using processes that are scalable and manageable for you and your working style to follow up on the relevant engagements from ideal customers to turn those impressions and likes and comments into qualified leads that you can then take along your sales journey. So that's really what today is all about, how you can be more productive with the time that you spend on social media, understanding the algorithms, understanding the different challenges, so that all the time you're putting into there is actually helping you grow your business. And it's predominantly through social media that I was able to take my DEI consultancy to a six-figure business, profitable business. And we actually hit $1 million in revenue in 2021. And that was with zero ad spend. I don't spend money on ads, and I don't pay influencers to advertise for me. It's just through organic storytelling and content marketing. So these are some of the lessons I want to share with you today. So as I said, we're using Menti. So if you've just joined, which I can see a few of you folks have, friendly reminder to introduce yourself in the chat, share your LinkedIn profile with all of the other founders and leaders here, and head to menti.com so that you can interact with today's session. Feel free to scan the QR code or go on menti.com and enter the code above. If you are multitasking, you don't have time to enter the QR code, menti.com and the actual numerical code that we are using for this session will always be at the top of the slide deck. If you're really, really stuck, just say help in chat and myself or another participant will guide you to the right place. So if you're not familiar with me and the work that I do, my name is Abadesi. I founded my company Hustle Crew in 2016 with a mission to make the tech industry more inclusive. And we're really lucky to have design training for ambitious leaders in tech and beyond. NHS, Department of Education, Airbnb, Meta, Notion. Really fortunate to also have had our training and other initiatives, other initiatives to support like founders and professionals in the industry featured in Bloomberg, the Financial Times, TechCrunch, and Forbes. So yeah, I know what I'm talking about is what I'm saying. And like I said, it's predominantly been social media marketing that has gained these partnerships for us, these leads for us, these press opportunities for us. If you didn't know, a couple of years ago, we launched an accelerator called Play School, which was an opportunity for me to take everything that I'd learned and put it into a program, the program that I wish existed when I first started Hustle Crew. I did lots of incubators, lots of accelerators, but I didn't feel like any of them focused enough on growth, especially growth in the current landscape of social media marketing. So this is really what Play School is all about. We focus on sales, marketing, and mindsets for resilience. And if you want to find out more about it, please head to hustlecrew.co/Play School. So a little bit about you and who's in the room. When you registered for this webinar, I asked you to tell me about what you want help with. And these were the dominant themes. You wanted to know how to get more quality, warm inbound leads. You wanted to know how to get more sales and repeat sales, especially when you don't like selling. You also wanted to know how to strike the balance between personal stories and sales content, promotional content. And you also wanted to know how to plan social media, in a scalable way without sounding too scripted. You also wanted to know how to attract and negotiate values aligned partnerships. Great. So this is what we're going to cover. Let me know if there's anything specific you want to cover that's not on the list that I just mentioned. I'll give you a few seconds. Maybe there's like a very pressing challenge front of mind for you, or something that, yeah, I didn't touch on there that is really key. This is your chance to flag that now. I'll give you a few seconds. Also okay if you're happy with the list I've got so far. Cool. So we've got how to be authentic and not artificial or too promotional. We're definitely going to touch on that shortly. Um, in the interest of time, I'm going to move us along, but if you do think of anything else, you can pop them into the chat. Someone's also suggested frameworks on successful content creation, which we will also touch on. How to stay motivated and avoid burnout. Yep, that's a really good one. And definitely something I'm sure we can all relate to. Content creation is incredibly time consuming, and we don't always see the results we want in the short time frame. Um, so someone's also asked how to integrate Calendly into social media so that you can book Zoom meetings. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about ideal workflows and processes to help you get from engagements, likes and comments, into an actual follow-up and then intro call, and taking that on your existing sales journey. So I'll touch on that shortly as well. Feel free to, again, just keep questions popping into the chat. I'm going to ensure that the final 10 or 15 minutes are dedicated to answering the questions that you feel I didn't cover in enough detail over the next portions of the training. So hold me accountable to that. Cool. I can see someone's also mentioned frameworks on successful content creation. Yeah, how to do this with limited time, how to tell personal stories without oversharing, not to be too founder led, but still tap into those who like that. Okay, cool. So yeah, what I'm definitely seeing here is also um, an opportunity to think about how the data we have on our followers and on our network can inform the type of content that we create. And that's going to be like a big part of the training that I touch on. So these are the 6 learning objectives for today. The first is helping you get clarity on who your ideal customers are. I think it's really, really important that we all have that. I know it's going to be different for everyone in the room, but getting to know who your ideal customers are, their role, their industry, their title, their pain points is really key, because that's really what's going to shape your content. The next thing is to develop data-driven recipes that beat constantly changing algorithms, right? You cannot control the algorithms. They're always going to change. You can't control the memes. You can't control what's trending, but you can control how you talk about yourself, your career, and your work. And I like to think of it in the context of recipes because I like cooking. So it's this idea of like what combinations of ingredients, so that's content, format, etc., always get you engagement from your ideal customers. I'm going to talk a bit about how important it is to discipline yourself to review data and update recipes. So be willing to constantly check what is getting you engagement, what's getting you engagement from the right types of people, and adapting how you work. And the cadence at which you do that is very personal to you, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. It depends on your priorities, but it's really important that you do those audits and you do that. I also want to teach you that the majority of the content you develop, and this will be based again on the data that you find, should be adding value. It should be the type that just gets people feeling seen, feeling like, oh my God, I relate to that, or like, oh, thank you so much for saying that. It's not going to be the content that sells. If I show you my historical data, the posts that I make that promote a product or a service or a speaking engagement are never the ones that go viral. The ones that go viral are the ones where I talk about how I struggled when I first started my business, or how, hard it is to be a founder or a business owner. Then the final things I'm going to touch on are these systems, processes, and tools, how you can create a workflow to consistently convert attention into sales conversations, whether that's Calendly, whether that's just email templates in Notion. And then finally, that reminder to regularly audit your online presence in line with data and goals. So hopefully that all sounds good. Again, feel free to jump into the chat with additional comments or questions or reflections. So over to you. I've got 2 slides about common mistakes, and I'm very, very curious which of these common mistakes you are currently making. So do you have lack of clarity on your ideal customer profile? Are you still not 100% sure what that job title is, what that company size is? Or is it data analysis? Are you still not regularly checking your highest performing posts on LinkedIn for engagements or impressions, going back the last 30 days, 6 months, 12 months? Is it your social media profiles? Maybe you do not even have consistency across these profiles. Maybe at a glance, it's not crystal clear what you do and how people can get help from you. Maybe it's not super clear what problems you solve, and it's not even clear how much it costs to start working with you or how your pricing works. Maybe it's even hard to find, that menu of offerings that just helps people start to get a sense of, oh, okay, so this is the kind of service you provide. These are the products that you sell. This is how I can find out more about them. For a lot of us, we might have done that really well on our website, really well on our contact form, but you go to our Instagram and it's just like the last fundraising campaign we gave money to in our bio. Or you go on LinkedIn and it's, 2 years old. It doesn't even relate to our current offerings, our current setup. So we're all guilty of these mistakes. At the end of the day, there's so many priorities to juggle. And also in markets like the current market, which is very volatile, the customer profile is changing. If I think of Hustle Crew, 2 or 3 years ago, all I needed to do was search Chief Diversity Officer tech company, and I would find my budget holder, right? Fast forward to 2025, that job title doesn't exist. Now my work is going from, diversity, equity, and inclusion or anti-racism to cultural transformation, leadership development, conflict resolution. So even if you think you did all of these things before, that work might be expired. It might be time for you to refresh your customer profiles, refresh your data, and also refresh all your social media profiles so that they're really, really reflective of where you are at today, right now. So for folks who just joined, please make sure you're on menti.com, entering the code at the top of the slide so you can also participate. So let's move on to a new batch of founder mistakes. I want to hear from you again. Which of these are you making? Maybe you are posting more promotional content than personal stories. Maybe you're like, oh gosh, I've got an event coming up. Let me push out some reminders for these. I know if I have something that I have to promote, I literally need to double the volume of social media content I'm making, because I can't just switch up my 3 posts a week to suddenly be 3 posts promoting stuff. I need to keep those 3 posts a week, which are personal, and add another 2 or 3 posts that are promotional to keep the balance right, or one, or even just 1 or 2. Maybe some of you are just not engaging with your online community. You hate opening the apps. They're such a time suck. So the only time you open the app is when you need to use it for your business goals, and then you jump out of it. So you're not actually commenting on your community's content, engaging with them. These are the things that the algorithm takes notice of. And these are also things which people just take notice of, right? Like if you're saying, hey, congrats on the new role, potential client, or that's really cool, thanks for sharing, people do remember that. At the end of the day, sales is a relationships game, and relationships are built through these moments of connection. Maybe you're also being too passive with how you treat social media engagement. So you're waiting for inquiries to come in. You're putting out content, and you're waiting for that DM slide. You're waiting for that, contact form filling out thing. Well, what you really could be doing instead is being a lot more proactive, right? Whether that's actually DMing the people that have engaged with it, saying, hey, I'd love to find out more about you. Here's what I do. Let's jump on a quick call. I have sticky notes on my laptop with variations of quick follow-up messages that I use when I just see who is commenting, who is liking, check them against my ideal customer. When they then tick the box of an ideal customer, jump into those messages and try and find a way to get them into my sales journey. But yeah, thanks everyone for sharing so openly and honestly. I really appreciate it. And these are all the mistakes that I used to make and sometimes still do. I have to get my team to hold me accountable. But let's jump into solutions. So the first thing I want to touch on again is that all your content should appeal to your ideal customer. I'm very often booked to speak on issues relating to women's leadership, women in the workplace, women in tech. So it's really important that a lot of the content that I talk about shares the struggles of what it's like to be a woman in tech. Here I am on stage at Albright's International Women's Day event last year. People often think of me when they're like, oh, who is someone who can speak openly and honestly about what it's like to navigate the tech industry as a woman and be, really relatable and really, you know, um, like share how she survived, the tactics she used, be an inspiration for the audience. Lots of the contents I share online, lots of the stories I tell are about those experiences. So when people then decide, oh, who can we invite as a keynote speaker or a panelist, I'm already really front of mind for them. So if you're struggling to refine your ideal customer profile, this is going to be a really helpful slide for you. And as I said, I'm sharing the recording and the slides in email afterwards. So don't stress yourself too much now. Instead, just think as I take you through this list, what industry do they work in? For me, it is mostly venture capital, startups, tech scale-ups, big tech. What is their job title? For me, it's often events coordinator or HR manager, whoever is in charge of, that team building day, that leadership offsite. What problems are they solving in their role? For me, it's always a cultural issue. They're solving the gender pay gap. They're solving lack of representation. They're solving, I don't know, employment tribunals. And what challenges do they face in their career? Maybe they're facing similar challenges to mine. They're not being heard, they're being interrupted, they're not being supported. What issues do they care about? Well, they care about leveling the playing field. They care about, reducing toxicity and hostility towards women and other underrepresented groups. And what makes them feel seen is someone like me speaking openly and honestly about what it takes to show up in these spaces and keep working in these spaces and striving to succeed in these spaces. So why am I the right person to collaborate with? Well, maybe I'm relatable, but on top of that, I have expertise. And on top of that, I have, clout. Like I'm a recognizable name because I'm pumping out all this content. So you have a bit of homework for me. And as you go into these homework tasks, I just want to remind you of like the following things. Simon Sinek says famously in one of the most watched TED Talks that people don't buy what you do. Okay, you're a coach. Okay, you're a consultant. Okay, you're an advisor. You are a product maker, whatever it is. Cool, great. We know that. We know those people exist. But people care about why you do it. They care about the unique angle you bring, the experiences you bring, the unique approach or philosophy that you bring. That's what takes someone from passively interested in investing to feeling like now is the moment to get your words into their world, to get your views into their world. Another quote that I wanted to share is from Maya Angelou, one of my favorite writers and humans ever. May she rest in peace. She says, people don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And I think that's where inspiration and confidence really comes from. If you are putting out stories, if you are reflecting on industry news, if you are speaking about trends, forecasting trends in a way that makes people feel excited, makes people feel optimistic, or makes people just feel validated, that's a really positive connection to make with people who might then want to collaborate with you. So bear these things in mind as you are shaping your ideal customer profile. As I said before, my ideal customer is someone that invests in unconscious bias training. Unconscious bias training is our best selling product at Hustle Crew. That is the training we sell the most. They're usually a team leader or HR leader. They're often from an underrepresented background. So they might be a woman of color, a global majority person. They care about making the workplace more inclusive. They're often overworked, underpaid, and feel unappreciated, right? So if I can also share industry insights on how HR leaders are undervalued or unappreciated, that's the kind of thing that speaks to them without directly speaking to them, that they can reshare without it feeling too personal and too exposing. They often have limited budget, limited time. They often need to fight to make changes. So again, if I can offer my services in a way that is crystal clear, concise, and budget friendly, that again makes it easier for them to work with me. They're also looking for a collaborator who's relatable, an expert, an easy sell in, someone that they can take to their boss, and it won't be a big argument as to why they've picked this person to collaborate with. What I want to remind you is that this is a work in progress. As I mentioned at the top of the session, market conditions change, and that means the job titles you're targeting could change, or the types of people you're targeting can change. So make sure you are holding yourself accountable to review this process at a sensible cadence. That might be yearly, that might be biannually, whatever it makes sense for you. And your ideal customer's priorities will shift, excuse the typo, at the end of the slide. But what I mean to say is, if you are selling into businesses, then you know that the environment in which the businesses are operating is going to change what's most important to them. Are you a medicine or a vitamin? And, there was a time when budgets were healthy where it didn't matter if you were like a nice to have. Whereas now with, year 4 of layoffs or 5 of layoffs or whatever, it's really important to actually position yourself more as like an essential. So that's everything on ideal customer. I know I had to whiz through that super quickly. Feel free to ask questions in chat. In the meantime, the homework that I will be setting for you is as follows. Define and refine your ideal customer. So find examples from past work, right? Look at your old invoices, look at clients that you've had for years, people you enjoy working with, or just browse, look at your competitors' websites. Who are they working with? Who do they have testimonials from? Go on LinkedIn, go on Instagram, look at the people that you would like to work with but aren't already working with. Look at the content that they engage with on their profiles. What kind of stories resonate with them? What kind of stories are they resharing? And then think about yourself. What personal reflections and industry insights can you share that would appeal to them? And think about personal stories that show how you're relatable. Now, I know someone said earlier, how do you share without sharing too much? You can share the same stories. I'm not going to lie. Like I tend to speak about the same things. There's a portion of myself I'm willing to make publicly available, but there's an even greater portion of myself that is contained within my closest circles because I don't want to put that stuff out in the public domain. So I would recommend that you start thinking about personal stories that relate to your business, the work that you do, origin story kind of things. And you can just have a collection of those that you repurpose and repeat in different ways and different shades and different forms, because people don't really remember things. And social media is a very short life cycle. I tend to, after 2 or 3 months, start recycling the most popular posts from the previous quarter. And they get the same amount of engagement because the algorithm's not paying attention to what you posted 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And if it worked 3 or 4 months ago, new image, slightly different headline, it's going to work today. So don't feel pressured to like constantly reinvent yourself or constantly share things that, come at the risk of you feeling overexposed. So that's the first thing. And I'm going to power through the next few. So let's talk about these data-driven recipes. When you audit your top performing posts on LinkedIn, on Instagram, you're going to start to see a pattern. So something that I did on LinkedIn, I started doing on LinkedIn, was to just click on my profile, click on posts, and then click onto wherever you can get the data, and then actually just narrow down the filter like past 365 days. So it will show me my highest performing posts from the last year. And then you can toggle between ranking it via engagements, likes and comments, reshares, saves, or ranking it through impressions, so just pure views. Some of those posts got 500,000 views, thousands of comments. And it was really interesting because I started to see a pattern emerging. And the pattern was personal reflections, whether or not you agree they belong on LinkedIn. And trust me, you won't be seeing me posting baby photos or wedding photos on LinkedIn, but personal reflections, like I felt X about Y, undoubtedly were in the top, but also reflections on current issues. So when I found a trending news story, so if someone asked, do you need premium LinkedIn for that level of details? No, I haven't had premium LinkedIn for years. This is all freely available data. You just click on your profile, and right under your bio, there's like a box that shows you your posts, and then you just click on your posts. And then once it takes you to that page, you can just look at your posts from the last week, the last month, the last 360 days, and then you can filter by engagements and impressions. But yeah, one of my other types of really, really high performing posts were taking an issue like this Black teacher suffered racism from her colleagues and took them to court and won. Why do we still see racism in places like primary schools, like where we should be teaching, peace and love and all these kinds of things? Posts like that did really, really well because everyone had an opinion on that and everyone could relate to a time that they experienced racism, but no one came to their defense. I also started to see a pattern with the type of imagery that was really engaging, whether it was infographic or whether it was like a candid shot. So what I'm challenging you to do, and I'll touch on this a bit more when I get to homework, is go through that data. And even if you're new to these platforms, even if you don't have a ton of data, you will still start to see a pattern in whatever posts you have been putting out and whatever content you have shared so far, enough to make you start to think about what you can adapt. So yeah, this is a work in progress, right? What got you here will get you there. You have to constantly keep adapting, and you adapt this based on data. And also, oh my gosh, again, pardon the typo. You can tell I did this deck before I had a matcha latte. That should say sales results at the very, very end. So adapt this data based on, adapt this approach, as in the recipes you make, the types of content, the template, based on data and sales results. So again, this is your homework. And as I said, I will be sharing the slides with you, so don't stress yourselves out too much. I want you to head to your LinkedIn posts and run a report from last year and find out what patterns you see. If you're struggling to do this, highly recommend just Googling, how do I check my LinkedIn post performance? And the AI summary will give you a step-by-step, like click your LinkedIn profile, click onto posts, go to the top, click onto this. So if you are struggling, really, really recommend just asking the internet how to get this data. You do not need to pay for LinkedIn Premium to get this data. Same with Instagram. You can do the same thing. If you haven't already made your Instagram profile a business profile, I really recommend doing that because you get more insights and you also get proactive suggestions from Instagram on how to optimize your profile and optimize your posts. Instagram have just started doing weekly summaries for business accounts, for example, where they show you your follower growth and your impressions and engagement based on what you did the week before. And it summarizes why it thinks those changes happened, like you posted more, you posted less, and it gives you recommendations for how to keep growing. Now, whether I trust those wholeheartedly is something else to debate, because more often than not, the advice is post more reels and posts. But still, it's kind of helpful to have the summary. And then once you've sort of looked at that, you can then think about what experiments you can start to develop based on the recipes that work for you. So do you need to start using more candid photos or selfies instead of just having text posts to drive more impressions? Do you need to work on that opening hook, that opening reflection? Do you need to, elaborate on industry news with your own story and your own learnings? Do you need to ensure you're always ending with audience insights in the comments? So yeah, my homework for you is to plan a content schedule for the next 2 weeks that's sustainable and leans into data-driven recipes. So for example, maybe you're just going to decide to post twice a week for the rest of September, replicating a certain type of post that you know did well. And that's not going to be a salesy post. More often than not, it's not going to be a sales post. It's going to be some sort of personal reflection. So I'm just going to jump into the comments. Yes, sorry, Debo. When I said that you can tell that I made the deck before I had matcha, I meant I didn't have enough caffeine in my brain. So that's why there are like a few typos in the deck. I just worked on it this morning. Apologies. I wanted to make sure it was based on all the questions that everyone had submitted, and people were registering as late as this morning. So yeah, it wasn't a tool. I'm sure there is a tool called matcha, but I was just referring to green tea. So yeah, sorry for that mix up. Thanks, Taz, for jumping in to answer. So yeah, this is data-driven recipes, data-driven combinations of text, photos, and I guess, prompts for your network, prompts for your audience. And I want you to just go away and think about what the data shows you are these successful recipes. Again, if you don't feel you have enough data, look at your competitors, look at your ideal mentors, look at your ideal customers. What's going viral? Whether or not you like someone like, I don't know, Stephen Bartlett, if you're reaching similar people, what are his posts that are going viral? You're going to see a lot of patterns on these platforms, whether it's Instagram, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's TikTok. There are certain types of human interest stories that will always do well. Piggybacking on a meme, which will always do well. I never do that. It's too time consuming. Or it'll be, a personal life milestone that will always do well. Again, you probably rarely will see me doing those latter two, but they work and people do them. So if you're struggling to find the data for recipes, copy other people's recipes, adapt them to yourself. So hopefully that homework is something good for you to take away. So powering through our learning objectives, we just have a couple more, and then I'm going to open up space for questions. So feel free to already start popping questions into the chat if you like. We've covered getting clarity on ideal customers. We've covered data-driven recipes. I want to urge you again to discipline yourself to really review that data regularly and make sure that you are applying the 80-20 rule. 80% of your content should not be sales. It should just be adding value. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about tools, workflows, to convert that social media stuff into sales conversations, leads, right, that you take through your sales journey. So please do that task of auditing your profiles, right? Your LinkedIn should optimize people who do not know you to very quickly understand how you can help them, how to contact you, what you offer. And if someone engages with your post, again, if it's helpful to think of it like a recipe, I want you to think of what is the recipe that you use for someone who engages with your post that is your ideal customer, right? So is that, oh, let me use my intro template in a LinkedIn DM. And in that intro template, which is in a sticky note on my desktop or saved on my notes app, is 2 or 3 lines about me, my Calendly link for them to book a time, and then some closing line which I personalize based on what I can see about them. So, hey, I'm X, I work on Y. I'd love to tell you more about what we do. I can see on your profile that you're working on these projects at that company. I'm a huge fan of this, or I just read about the work you're doing there. Would love to get your thoughts on that too. So I'm assuming and hoping that you already have existing sales systems, right? I'm assuming and hoping you already have some kind of workflows you've created for yourself that work for you, whether that's Notion, HubSpot, Google Drive, I don't know, where once someone is an inquiry, you're taking them on this journey. Okay, someone just rang my doorbell, they'll have to wait. But I think what you have to assume with social media is that you can't take people. Oh God, I'm so sorry. 1 second. Ah, it stopped. Okay, great. Um, what you have to assume is that you are now being the person to initiate the inquiry, right? So this is where it goes from waiting for that inbound DM to you actually starting that process, right? Like, okay, you liked my post, you commented on my post, you saved my post, you meet my ideal customer profile. I am therefore going to reach out to you. So it's really important that you are super proactive in how you approach this, and you need to experiment with different messages, different styles. Some people will be super responsive. Other people might need a few nudges. Other people will just flat out say, I'm not interested, or I'm not the right person in my company. And then you can try and find out who the right person is. But when you start to be more proactive with this type of outreach on social media, I think it's also really important for you to be willing to change and adapt. Someone says, how often do you follow up if someone doesn't respond to the first message? I usually do, me personally, like 3 messages in total and then leave it for a while. But I know people that say conversion happens on message 5 or 7. So really it's up to you. Um, One of the things I want to say is it's really important for you to always collect the ingredients for your social media recipes. So take selfies at industry events. If you find interesting articles for your target customers, bookmark them. If you think of anecdotes you're happy to share, make notes of them. And someone says, oh yeah, and also remember that this is, again, work in progress. So systems adapt to your preferences and your customers' needs. Someone says, how do you handle those who want your services for free? What I do is I have lots of free resources online. So if you go to Hustle Crew Live on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, I have webinar clips, I have webinars. If you go on hustlecrew.substack.com, I've got how to run meetings in an inclusive way, how to debias recruitment. So when people want my services for free, I just give them the free resources. And then I will still probably try to get them on a call to try and think of what could be like a budget friendly introduction. There are a lot of clients I work with now who spend tens of thousands of pounds with us, who initially only got free resources. And then maybe the first invoice was like £300 or £500. But over time, building up that trust and loyalty, are now spending tens of thousands of pounds with us. So, as offensive as it is when people ask us for free work, that's not a reflection of your value. It's probably a reflection of their company's budgets or lack of clarity on how to get budget. But if you start the relationship, you can learn more about how their company works, and then you can use that knowledge to adapt. So I just want to give you my last piece of homework before we sort of get to wrap and more questions. Audit your current tools and systems for creating social media content. Are they working for you? How can you improve them? Someone in the chat said, I don't have any system set in place. Any recommendations? I've actually done a webinar on how to streamline systems and operations. So I really recommend going to Hustle Crew's YouTube and checking that out. Just go on youtube.com/at Hustle Crew Live, or just go on hustlecrew.co and click to find our YouTube. But there's a whole webinar that I've done on that and like a masterclass. So hopefully that will be helpful. Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Anthony is there. So my homework for you on this front is, how can you make your existing tools as frictionless as possible to follow your data-driven recipes? For example, a lot of us are using Calendly, but are we using all of the features that Calendly has? So I, for example, learned that Calendly can also, for every type of meeting, have automated emails. So what I started to do was share some of the free resources that I've made with my intro call people before and after the meeting. So before the intro call, Calendly has a quick email saying, hey, really excited to tell you more about Hustle Crew. In case you're curious, here are our most popular webinars and our most popular articles. I look forward to connecting. That's automated. I just built it into Calendly. And then after that intro call, another automated email goes out saying, hi, thanks for your time. I know, days like these, people are super busy, so it means a lot to us. In the meantime, just wanted to share some, really helpful cheat sheets that we give to team leaders on how to improve culture. So hopefully that is like really helpful. Um, the other thing that I wanted to say is that look at how you currently take a sales lead from engaging with social media to an intro call with you, or like even following up on that intro call, nudging that. Like, how can you set up little reminders to make sure that you're not dropping balls on these? I can see Frances in the chat. Highly recommend checking out her work if you are lacking in systems. We did a bunch of work with her to optimize our Notion workspace to the way I like to do sales and the way my team likes to do operations. And we have very simple features like reminders from the last time I contacted someone that then show up in my notifications feed, so I remember to nudge them again. So yeah, you should think about how you can make these steps smoother, consistent, and scalable for you. We're all unique individuals, and that's why it can be really nice to work with consultants who can tailor things to you instead of just buying an off-the-shelf product and having to make it fit for purpose. So that has been a whistle stop tour of these 6 learning objectives. I appreciate we could definitely spend a lot longer on this, but I wanted to try and cover as much as I could so that you have enough food for thought and certainly enough homework to just start challenging yourself and reflecting on this. And yeah, I love the discourse happening around working for free. Slavery is over. I have to remind people of this all the time. Absolutely push people towards buy me a coffee, paid consulting, any other, passive income resources you have available, ebooks, etc. Highly, highly recommend that. Um, so I've kind of given you a lot of homework, and now is my time to tell you a little bit about how I could help you with that homework, and then we're going to go into questions. As I mentioned, a couple of years ago, I launched Play School, which is an accelerator I care very deeply about because I felt like I did all the accelerators, all the programs, Y Combinator, Founders Factory, the family, and I left them feeling like I was still struggling with fundamental things relating to my business. I thought that, I didn't want to build a unicorn. I didn't want to go out and raise rounds of funding, but I want to build a profitable business. I want to pay myself a decent salary. I want to pay my team a decent salary. I want to make an impact. And that's really what Play School is all about, like helping impact driven founders build scalable, sustainable businesses. A couple of the Play School alumni are in the chat, so I would love for them to give a little shout out now. But yeah, so it's 2 weeks of intensive support to elevate your sales and marketing workflows to close bigger deals faster. The first session on the 29th of September will focus on growth engines, goal setting, and sales pipelines. The second session will focus on sales and marketing stack. So how you take a lead from inquiry to close along that funnel or pipeline, however you think about it. And then the third session will focus on mindsets and mental health. So founder lessons I learned the hard way. We do have an IRL wrap party on the final day. And that will be for you to get new headshots and social media images. And in addition to the 3 master classes, you get one-on-one coaching sessions with me. So 3 one-on-one coaching sessions, which we can use to do the homework from each of those master classes, or just to do any other things that you are focused on. Now, for attending this webinar, and I'm very, very grateful that you have attended this webinar. I know we're all so busy and there's like 14 weeks left in the year. So how you choose to spend your time really matters. And I'm so grateful you choose to spend it with me. We have 20% off Play School until midnight, Monday, the 15th of September. So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it. Feel free to email me, abadesi@hustlecrew.co, if you have any questions or want to see more of the lesson plans and content. I'm here for you. And super, super grateful to Taz and Nikki for speaking up. If you want to contact them and ask them about their experiences on the accelerator, you can. But we now have 10 minutes left, and I just want to know what else I can answer. If there's a question in chat that I missed, feel free to copy and paste it. I would also be so grateful if you could open up the link there and share feedback. Feedback from you helps me improve the next session. So it helps me understand how I've allocated the time, whether it's sort of been at the right level, the pacing, the visual aids, the Menti tool. I want to always make sure that if you're giving up an hour of your precious day, it felt worth it. So please let me know. And I'm not sensitive, so you can be as harsh as you need to be in the feedback. Thanks so much, Brittany and Tina. I'm glad you found it helpful. Yeah, feel free to reach out when you're doing the homework if you need to get further clarity. I'm very slow to reply on email sometimes, but I do always reply. I'm just going to also sort of go back because I think there were a few questions that I missed. So yeah, let me just start with Anthony's. How would you handle your socials and recipes if you're transitioning to a focus away from your current area of expertise or what you're known for? I think this is a really interesting question and something that I'm also personally thinking about. I've been thinking less about, let's say, inclusion training and consultancy and more about cultural transformation or leadership development. And one of the things that's been really helpful for me is to actually not look at my historical data, but look at my like new competitors. So I'm looking at people that are doing the kind of work that I'm now aspiring to do, or people who've been really successful building a reputation, doing, cultural transformation, conflict resolution, all that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of trying to learn from their recipes. And LinkedIn is so great because you can see people's featured posts and top performing posts. So yeah, I would highly, highly recommend actually being a bit forward looking and thinking about what's working for the people you will be competing with, even if they're not the people you've historically been competing with. So Brittany, yes, the sessions will be recorded for Play School. We actually had a couple of US based founders last year in 2024. I can work to your time zone when it comes to scheduling the one-on-one coaching. And yeah, the live Zoom sessions, they'll be very similar to today, but a much smaller group and more interaction. But yeah, they'll all be recorded and they'll all have homework included. So yeah, really excited to hear you're interested in joining, and hopefully I will see you in the next cohort. Thanks for all the positive feedback, Maria. That's really sweet of you to say. Nikki, you asked, we live in an increasingly hostile environment for social impact founders. Any survival tips? Fantastic question. I took a break from TikTok because I posted a story about Microsoft cutting back on its DEI efforts and how I was personally upset to see that headline because I love their products. And I think that they were actually one of the trailblazers in speaking openly about the need to do accessibility work and inclusion work. And I got targeted by the racist spam bots. I had something like 300 comments in 10 minutes telling me to go back to Africa, calling me a primate, all these horrific things. So I just stopped going on TikTok for a really long time. That's like one of the ways that I really try to protect my energy. I choose the platforms that I'm on, and I prefer the platforms that have much better content moderation. At the moment, TikTok and Twitter are not those places. So that's something. I also will be honest, I've actually reduced the amount that I post online. I only do, on average, 2 original posts every week. And that's been my cadence for the last few months. And it hasn't impacted my sales. I'm also increasingly using email marketing more. So when there is something new that we're offering, going into emails I have with past clients or past inquiries and finding a way to inform them of that either through the email or through a catch-up call. So yeah, my survival tips would be to just work for, yeah, what makes sense for you, and don't expose yourself to online spaces where you will be targeted for your work in a negative way. Please, again, feel free to reshare your LinkedIn profile so that everyone can connect. I will also, unless anyone objects, yeah, maybe there's a way that I can do like a LinkedIn message to everyone who has shared their LinkedIn profiles in the group here, in the chat here, just so it's really easy for all of us who are here now to quickly follow up. So I'll put a little action item to do a group LinkedIn message, and then that way we can all stay connected. Final 5 minutes, final shout out for questions. I know there were a few things around sales systems for sales and emails. Oh yeah, Someone said, does anyone recommend a good CRM for sales, but also sending email campaigns? What I find in my experience is that there's always a tool that does one thing really, really well, but it doesn't then do a second thing the way I would like it to. So HubSpot, for example, can in theory do both, but I didn't like the way that it did them. So I predominantly use Notion, but Notion doesn't have email capabilities. So what I use for emails is a Google Sheet plugin called Yet Another Mail Merge, or YAMM. It works for me because I'm very competent in Google Sheets. And it's really easy and really cheap, and it gives me the filtering and tracking that I need. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. I think with tools and systems, there is unfortunately a lot of trial and error needed until you find the thing that works best for you. Or as I said, working with a consultant like Francis, who can help build a system based on what you need. Okay, any other questions or comments?
I am so sorry to jump in. I'm currently driving. Well, thank you very much. That was really valuable. I am in an industrial space where, unfortunately, we don't necessarily need to rely on social media to generate revenue. However, by God's grace, the business is doing quite well. So I'm at a point where I'm also want to provide value, and that's in the space of representing our unrepresented people and also being, I don't know, just part of the community and being able to provide value in some way, shape, or form. Um, how would you utilize social media to actually be that figure?
Awesome, thank you. So the question was, how can I use social media to be that figure where I'm showing, the industry and the ecosystem, who I am, what I stand for. And I think there are some really credible examples of that happening in social media right now. Often it comes from people who like are running nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, or people who are like investors, impact investors. So I think that that's about your values and doing storytelling that relates to your values and also your vision for the future and the legacy that you want to leave behind. So it could be reflecting on your education, your upbringing. It could be reflecting on what you see as pressing issues in the world today. It could be, what you are excited about in the future, what you're worried about in the future, and using these personal insights as a way to start conversations. And, if you don't want to necessarily talk about your business to promote your business, you could talk about what your business has achieved and use those achievements as learnings and inspiration for people in the wider ecosystem. So yeah, that would be where I would start. And I would also just look at people who I think are doing that well online and copy them or try and do what they're doing. Hopefully that answered your question, but yeah, feel free to let me know. Cool. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, how about integrating AI and AI bots to sort of AI employees, so kind of in conjunction with your social media and managing all the leads, and what's your views on AI?
I personally don't use AI to manage leads. I use AI to like help me analyze like my social media data and give me suggestions on recipes that I can use. But when it comes to leads, I think that I'm very much the kind of business owner where it's like I treat people the way I want to be treated. And I really hate like those AI automated comments that just feel super generic. So I'm trying to create a really personalized and tailored approach. Also, I'm often dealing with people leaders and HR leaders. But yeah, that's sort of my view. So yeah, probably not the best person to ask because I'm not interested in that. I don't use them.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. I'll give you 2 minutes back. I will be following up later today with the recording and the slides. And for those of you who opted in with your LinkedIn profiles, I'll just send a group message via LinkedIn so we can all stay connected.
Thank you so much. It was such a great session.
Oh, I'm glad it was helpful. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your days and see you all soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. See you soon. See you soon.
Thanks, Abadesi.
Thanks. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.